I've been a fan of Junji Ito for quite some time now. He's one of my favorite artists, and Uzumaki is one of his most celebrated works. I didn't even know this adaptation existed until one day I was browsing half-price books and I found Uzumaki, or also known as Spiral, on DVD. Being the Junji Ito fan that I am, I snagged it even though it was a little pricey for a used DVD. Of course, just shortly after picking it up, the Blu-ray transfer would be announced. I decided to reread the original manga before going into the movie. It has been a few years since I've read it, and it's a great read that I would strongly recommend. The film version follows the same group of characters, Kiri, a schoolgirl, and her boyfriend Shuichi, who live in a small Japanese mountain town that slowly at first but very quickly becomes tormented by Uzumakis or spirals. The book is broken into chapters, well duh, but those chapters act as almost standalone stories that build into something bigger just involving the same characters. In a way, the book is structured almost like an anthology with a running background narrative. The film isn't really structured this way at all. The film takes a lot of the stories and incidents from the books and compiles them into a narrative around Kiri and Shuichi and their families. The story that's in the first couple of chapters of the book is kind of the main structure of the film here. Then as the story progresses, they mix in some of the other stories from the book, using those elements to bolster the horror in the narrative, rather than feeling like an anthology that focuses on the horror first and then builds the overarching narrative later. It's worth mentioning too that the film was created before Junji Ito finished Uzumaki, so the ending of the film is pretty different than the book. The book itself is a pretty massive story with some really wild moments, so I personally think, even though if the film was made after the book was finished, choosing a different direction for the film story to go in is not a bad idea. By no means where the film takes the story is bad either. It's actually not a bad ending considering the book wasn't even finished yet. I have to say I love the presentation and direction here. The film has a very unique energy and presence that complemented the source material very nicely. The way the camera moves, choices in the editing all help to add to the distortion and build its atmosphere. There's moments where distorted swirls will appear in the background, and just the way they film some of the standard dialogue scenes added to this just weird uneasy vibe through the whole thing. I'm not sure if it's the DVD copy or not, but most of the film looks cropped. One day I'll upgrade this to Blu-ray to see if it was or not. It just didn't feel like it was the full image, but if it's the true aspect ratio, then I kind of like that, because that constant feeling like the image was cropped where we're not getting the full picture would kind of work well with the tone. A lot of the special effects looked really cool. Sure, some of the CG elements are dated, but considering the time, they still look pretty good. A lot of the horror designs look amazing and unique, truly capturing Ito's work on screen and staying faithful in those regards. The color grading is very dark with a lot of green overlay, which helps sell some of the effects. I figured the worst looking things would probably be the faces and the smoke and the snail people, but they were really well done, I thought, in the film, and was very striking. There were multiple moments where I thought to myself, that's really cool. My biggest hang up with the film, unfortunately, is the story. Adaptations of books, comics, or whatever should be able to stand on their own. However, I feel like with Uzumaki, the film, you should really read the book first. I'm not sure if someone who hasn't read the source material would get very much out of the film or really even understand what's going on at all. This is a quick 90-minute film that really probably should have just added another hour to its film to build its concept alone. Add in building the characters, it just didn't work in the 90-minute runtime. One of the things that works so well in the book is its pacing. Ito sets up everything slowly, so when you get to the cascading madness at the end of the book, not only is it horrifying, but you almost can't believe how bad it got, while also understanding how it got that way. It sells the horror while also building the characters very nicely. I understand this is a film. You don't have the length to fully adapt the book, but the film feels more like Cliff Notes, relying on your previous knowledge of the source material to trim out some of its world and character building. Sure, Kiri and Shuichi get the most amount of attention. I don't even mind the changes to Kiri's family. They kill off the mom and never mention a brother. Most of the film follows Shuichi's family, which I'm okay with too. Like I said, I like the direction they took the story considering they made up the ending, but I feel like most of my connection with the characters has to do with me reading the book first and not the film itself. Sure, the film is presenting a lot of horror really well visually, but again, it felt more like Cliff Notes rather than being fully developed. In the eyes of someone who hasn't read the source material, I'm sure the atmosphere and visual hits would work as intended, but that investment and awareness of what's really going on, as the film doesn't really try to explain the spiral, would leave them wanting more out of it narratively. There's some good bones here, and I will eventually be upgrading this to Blu-ray. As a fan of Junji Ito and the original source material, there's a lot to appreciate here, as it felt faithful and pretty well done. I just wish we had more time to help build its own structure rather than relying so hard on your previous knowledge of the source material. It works well as a companion piece for sure, but I wouldn't go into it without reading the book first, and I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10.